Hi, and very welcome to the Blockchain and Diversity Roundtable. With me, I got Montserrat Guardia Güell, who's the CEO of the multi-sector consortium of Alastria, Shawnna M. Hoffman, who's the global leader of the IBM Cognitive Legal Practice and co-founder of Diversity in Blockchain, and also online, we hope it will work, we were trying and are trying. We got Joshua Ashley Klayman, who's from Linklatter's US Head of FinTech and Head of Blockchain and Digital Assets, and also co-founder of Diversity in Blockchain. I'm Stefan Junestrand. I hold a PhD in architecture and a CEO of a group of Tecma, and I spent all my entire professional career trying to include technology in the built environment. So it's a pleasure to speak here again. I was here 2 years ago speaking about smart cities and moderating a roundtable. Today, the roundtable is about blockchain and diversity. Before we start, just 10 minutes, let me explain to you what blockchain is and the values of blockchain, so we all can have a common platform when we start the discussion and debate here on, with Montse and Shawnna and Joshua. I think there should be a PowerPoint. If you're, yeah, here. Okay, blockchain is a technology for registration and transactions. And we have always used and written down transactions and registrations from old times. First, we made it manually during thousands of years. Then, during maybe 30, 40 years, we'd used digital platforms to register in banks, land registrations, and so on. But what is happening now, that from those centralized technologies, we are moving on towards what is possible to do digitalized but decentralized. And why is this interesting? Because blockchain offers 4 core values. It's immutable, cyber secure, transparent, and it creates trust. Let's see how. It's immutable because blockchain use a type of register that for every new register, every new line of every new register we do, there's a new block. And that block uses cryptographic to create the new block. So every block that is added is based on the data from the previous block, but with using complex mathematical algorithms. So it's actually a chain of blocks. So that's why all this technology is called blockchain. And the most interesting thing I think about blockchain is that once you have written something, you can never change it. You can't go back and change something. You can add information, but never go back. The second value is that it's cyber secure, because the blockchain database is replicated in real time in a distributed network. So first it used cryptographic, and it used a distributed network, which makes it impossible almost to hack. It's really cyber secure. And the third value is that it's transparent, because anybody in a public blockchain can download and see what's happening in real time and participate in the blockchain. So you can't hide any information of what's written on the blockchain. And fourth, it changes the trust, the way we trust each other, because, or have to trust each other. Because traditionally, we can do business or transactions one-to-one. We meet up and we do the transaction and all is fine. Or we can use a bank. But what we always have to trust the other person or the bank. But now we can actually trust the code and the system, and we don't have to trust each other to do transactions. And that's really, really important, because it permits us to do transactions without the middleman, without the bank, without the public administration. We can actually do in between us in a peer-to-peer network transactions in real time without anybody interfering. So we got these core 4 values, but we got another concept that is really important. These are sort of the core values of the initial blockchain. But we got other functionalities, like, for example, the smart contracts that are contracts written in software. It's a software application that allows us to program contracts that are self-executing. for automated actions, and they're based upon a single conditional statement like, if then though that. If she wants to, she puts up, for example, her scooter and says, if somebody pays $100 or $1,000 for this scooter, the first one that puts the money sends the money will get the registration for the scooter. So if he then sends $1,000 automatically in real time, at the same time, not that he sends the money first. When he sends the money, the permission is sent to him and the money to her. So it's really automated actions that we can build so much functionality based upon algorithms on that is really, really useful. And also, what we can trade and what we can register and do on the blockchain, it's called tokens. We translate everything to tokens. A token can also represent, for example, an economic value, a physical asset as a scooter, or a service, or a right, for example, a right to vote in an election, or anything we want. And if we can also give these tokens, these are not only as money, we can give them properties and conditional use. For example, for when, where, how, and by whom, and during which circumstances these can be used. For example, a token for elections can only be used by this person at this time and this time frame, etc., and one time. Or we can give tokens, for example, social welfare that can only be used, for example, for food or school or anything like that. We don't need to give the money and then, or a check that this is a value, but we can do this digitally. And the super interesting thing here, when we do this, we can include any value, and we can give the tokens properties and conditional use, and thanks to this, we can also use behind this data analytics, because we're getting data that is very, very perfectly structured and very good structured, and we can bring down the data, and we can use data analytics, machine learning, or whatever we want on that data to provide services that are very, very much different and very much better than the current services, because we will know exactly everything that will happen. And in this token economy, we can also use the smart contracts that automatically executes all these kind of things. So just a couple of concepts that we will use in this discussion. You will hear public and private blockchains. Public blockchains, anybody can participate and download and be an active part of the blockchain. Private blockchain or permission blockchain, you need permission from the one that started the blockchain to participate. That could be, for example, a closed network or in a supply chain, or it could be public administration in a country, or anything that we want to close the blockchain, not to leave out our data to other countries, etc. You will also hear the concept DApp, because the way we use blockchain in general as a user interface is exactly the same way as we use an app on our mobile phones. But some people call them DApp, like decentralized application, not an application, decentralized. I think personally that when blockchain evolves, this will disappear, and we will call them all apps. So the D will disappear, so we can disappear the apps. But the way we interact with blockchain is exactly the same way we interact with any other service on the cloud or online on our mobile phones. And here, there's not only one blockchain. Initially, you probably heard about blockchains used for cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin, etc. That's one kind of blockchain and one way to use blockchain, but now there are coming so many new ways to use blockchain. And blockchain, what I have explained is sort of the initial functionality. Now there are new ways to use blockchain, new ways to verify the blockchains, etc. You will read about things and said, that's not what they told me in this conference. But it's more or less, because it's moving ahead and we don't know where this will finish, but it's really, really important to have in mind there's so many technical solutions, so many applications. So when you hear about blockchain, you can hear very many different things. And blockchain has not only changed banking, now it's changing so many other industries. And we'd just like to take a look at a couple of use cases for 1 minute before we start the discussion. Maybe the most famous one outside cryptocurrency is supply chain. In a supply chain, we have so many problems. The supply chains are so long. They're actually currently so intransparent. We can't see where the products come from, through where they passed. And there's so much fraud within these kind of supply chains in almost any market, medicine, as I wrote down, clothes, food, everything. So there are some really important use cases now going on where we can track the supply chain. For example, Walmart, the biggest American distributor of food, uses supply chain to track salad and now many other kind of vegetables and fruit and so on, so we can know the origin as an end user. On the right side down here, you can see, for example, a coffee application for supply chain. You can see where it's grown, by whom it was grown, but how it's traveled, where it has been toasted. You can follow it all the way and track it all the way on your mobile phone, like any app, and this gives really power to the end user. A second one is voting, for example. Voting, there's so much fraud going on in voting in all the levels, from national levels to local and communities and so on. And we have really big problems with voting in many countries. We see yesterday, I think it was a South American country, without mentioning it, that there is fraud going on. So what can we add with blockchain? Well, blockchain is not only making voting digital, but we can also see, we got a track record for whom our vote has been registered. We can see if we can see vote for specific areas. For example, in one area we can divide the votes. In one area I vote for this one, and another one for another area I vote for another project. We can rank alternatives, for example. I like this one best and this second best, and I can, for example, give 60% to this political party and 40% to this one. And I can also change my vote until the last time, because maybe you discover something. So now if we want to vote, and for example, post-voting and so on, we have to do that 2 weeks before. But this we could do in real time until the last minute we can vote. And we can vote from anywhere, which gives really helps accessibility. And there's a lot of voting projects going on. In the US, there will be some trials, and the first real one was made in Moscow there like 2 weeks ago, a successful blockchain voting for the Duma in Moscow. And the last one, identity. It's so important. Refugees, for example, can own their own identity on the blockchain. They don't have, the identity is not owned by a country that had to issue a passport. The identity is yours, so the refugee, when he comes, or you come to another country or another place, or have to identify it yourself, you carry that ID with you or in the cloud, but it's your ID, it doesn't belong to anybody else. Okay, thank you so much for letting me do this introduction. We're going to start a debate. The first thing I wanted to ask was Montserrat to present Alastria, which is a Spanish network. Okay, it's your turn to talk.
Okay. So thank you very much. I will stay here very close to you and to all of you. I want just to take 1 second to look very clearly to the picture you have in front of you. We have this name, Alastria, but you see that this is the globe. This is this looking at the globe, at the overall wall, because what we think in Alastria is that we have a clear opportunity of using blockchain to change this beautiful wall in something that will be more sustainable, of course, more oriented to diversity, and a little bit better for wealth and health. So this is what it is, Alastria. I will try to pass the next slide. Okay, perfect. So the first thing, Stefan, thank you very much, because clear explanation of blockchain. And just coming backwards to a little thing that is called data. No, all right now in the digital world, we are listening and we are reading and we are using and sending and getting data. Okay, data is just something very clear. It's a number, it's a fact, it's 33. Okay, if I say 33, it's a data. But if I add there a little bit of context, a little bit of relation, I can say 33 degrees, and you know that I'm talking about temperature. Okay, this is information, 33 degrees. But if I say 33 degrees in Madrid in summer, okay, you got something else, you got knowledge. And if I'm telling you it's the first time that we have 33 degrees in Madrid in summer, you will tell me, are you sure? What that means? We are having a climate change. So we are going to wisdom. This is the key. We have been working in digital world with data, but we want to move to a new digital world that is the wisdom one, the one that can give us a little bit more of humanity in how we are living in the digital world. So this is Alastria. Alastria have been born to have clear innovation done by not just the technology, but joining also the public administrations, the industry, the services from all the segments, and also the academy, the research and innovation. This is very important for us, and this is what is clear. We are working in a way that we, the association, we have a very small layer of people dedicated. This is what we call the engine, the management engine, and this engine is moving on to have 3 axes working with the partners. The partners of the association are what I said, industry, so small and large companies in Spain, but from June we are going to other countries in Europe and also in South America. And also we are working on methodology and technology. So these 3 engines that are technology, methodology, and people. So we think that our partners can use the technology of blockchain to create a new way of doing business, a new way of living in a new society, a new way of exchanging information with public administrations, a new way of governing ourselves. So that's really challenging, and for that we created a clear concept that we call competition. So we will collaborate all together in the association to do what is the basics, the infrastructure, the technological infrastructure, fitting this infrastructure in a regulation, in this case in a European regulation, and we will go further later on in other regulations, and also to be able to do it in a way that all the industries can use it to compete. So we collaborate to create the basis, and then we let compete, and we will compete to create new business for the future in this infrastructure. So having said that, right now, all we have done is growing. So every month we have 3% more of people, industries, administration, and universities that believe that joining effort will make this change faster and also more sustainable, and also giving the opportunity to have more understanding on diversity. So we are 520 partners right now. We are split around all the centralized organization in all Spain, but also other countries. And what we look is for any little town where we have talent, where we have the need to use the technology to make something very clever and to transform the industry and the way of exchanging data that will be wisdom at the end. So doing that, we have been working very clearly in the way national and international. So we participate actively in the European Blockchain Observatory. We have also be founders of the International Association of Trusted Blockchain Applications in Europe, but is worldwide. We have been working in H2020, like blockchains, to promote what we call entrepreneurship, and also we are in South America, and we have been working together with Canada and US. And we are moving to look after what is happening in Asia. So having this view of worldwide, I will encourage you to come again to Malaga. This is a beautiful city, to come several times, to be here in November, because we will talk 3 days about that, about how we can make it together, this big change. So thank you. I tried to be short. Thank you very much.
For your introduction of Astra, really interesting. And Shawnna, I would ask you to present your initiative, which is Diversity in Blockchain.
Thank you. Yes, well, thank you for the opportunity to be here today. It is an absolute honor, so I appreciate the invite. And, you know, we have just embarked on the 4th Industrial Revolution. We're only a few years into it. Now, it's the 4th Industrial Revolution called intelligence. And there are 4 key technologies within this industrial revolution that are totally going to change the world. One of them is blockchain. It's also artificial intelligence, the cloud, and then quantum computing. So as we start to see the world changing around us, the perfect time for accessibility changes and diversity and inclusion to be involved is right now. Every one of us in this room has an opportunity to change the new technologies that are being developed today and to make a huge difference for those who will use these technologies over the next decade and probably millennia. And we founded Diversity in Blockchain. Let's see, where is the... Oh, which one? Oh. See. Doesn't seem to be working.
It doesn't work, the clicker.
Oh.
Next slide.
Okay, so we'll take a second. So now, why blockchain? Blockchain specifically is a ledger, and it's used for transparency and traceability. So we have the cloud that holds our data. We have blockchain that provides us the ledger of where everything is, where all the data is, and of course, we don't know what we can't measure. And so blockchain helps us to get the insights and also provide traceability of all the information in the world so that we can actually measure those items that we're curious about and would like to have more information on. And on the intelligence side, of course, artificial intelligence comes in to then dive in and be that interactive component, and we're able to build chatbots that help with accessibility and gives us that insight. And then with quantum computing, I don't know if you've seen the news lately, Google and IBM have been arguing about who has the most supreme quantum computer. But at this point, we're seeing major speeds and an opportunity for all of our systems to be very fast. So as we look at blockchain, and one of the reasons we founded Diversity in Blockchain is because we saw issues initially with these emerging technologies not looking at accessibility, not looking at inclusion, and not looking at diversity. Often we have developers, all companies in the world tend to have this issue. We try not to at IBM, but it happens sometimes where you have a developer who sits in a room, he or she develops something without asking for input. And so we have a great technology being built that possibly isn't accessible. You know, one of the technologies that I had worked on about a decade ago, we did not take the forethought into those who are colorblind. So when we initially created the technology, we thought it'd be great to give kind of those flags and signals, but unfortunately the flags and signals were all circles and it was red, yellow, green. Now, the problem with that, of course, is with those who are colorblind, if there's not a shape, you don't know what the difference is. And so those are some of the, smaller items and, of course, key for many of those of us in this room that I love this phrase, we don't know what we don't know. And so if you have someone who's developing software that is not accessible, does not have inclusion and diversity in the forethought, it's going to miss some very key components that everyone in this room has insights into, and you know more, of course, than the developers themselves. So as we look at the tech industry in general, we have some key components that kind of came out to us. People of color are way underrepresented as we look at the tech industry. In America, Asian Americans are representative at a higher rate in the tech industry than overall private sector, but they're less likely to move up into executive positions. And then, of course, noting very importantly that women hold only 25% of executive and senior roles. And so we don't have as much diversity and inclusion in the tech industry in general, and that's one of the things we at Diversity in Blockchain are pushing for, is to have more inclusion. Let's see. Got it. So, and here's a few statistics as we start to see what the opportunities are for change. These are some of the simple opportunities. I could put many more slides up that I'm sure you all have insights into, and to be able to dig in deeper into other areas that we need to tell the world, that these are the areas that we are lacking in. At IBM, I have a colleague of mine, and he's a lovely man, very good person, and we were sitting in a conference room and talking about all of our teams, and it was about 15 of us, leaders at the company, and he kept on saying, guys. Well, after about the 20th time he said, guys, one of the other leaders looked at him, and she said, do you only have guys in your team? And he sat back and went fully white and said, yes, I only have guys on my team, and I hadn't thought about that. Now, this is a man who has 3 teenage daughters, all about to go off to college, and when he sat back, he got very quiet and was sad with himself because he hadn't pushed diversity. He hadn't pushed the inclusion. He just hired the people who, seemed to fit, but hadn't looked at his team as a holistic team, needing various different types of people. And so the one word I always use when we talk about any of these issues is purposefulness. We definitely need to be purposeful with technology and have the forethought and the mindfulness to make sure that all are included, especially as we embark on this fourth industrial revolution and start to see the world changing in ways that are very fast and absolutely amazing.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
I don't know if you can hear me. Yes.
Yeah.
I think it's...
Okay.
And I also think that it's the first big takeaway from this roundtable, that we are in the fourth industrial revolution, and this is a fantastic moment that we have to work for diversity, accessibility within all these 4 and many other technology trends and in many other areas. So the next speaker, we hope that the technology will be with us. I'd like to welcome Joshua Klayman, live from New York, we hope. Are you there, Joshua? Oh, she's there. The question if she can hear us, and we can see her. We just wait from the control. Yeah, it's coming in. Okay. I was trying to make a little time, and I actually have a question for her to start to kick off with when she comes up. They're talking. Should we just continue a little with the discussion and then come back when Joshua is available? I think that's the best thing. Okay. Oh, she's coming in. Oh, exciting. Joshua, can you hear me? Can you hear us? No. That definitely sounds like a Skype signal.
Sounds very cool,
Yeah.
doesn't it? Well, and I think if we were to take a couple key takeaways, the time is right.
Yeah.
There has not been a better time in the world and in society for us to make major movement in regards to providing accessibility to all the new technology, but to everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if Joshua is not with us, I would...
Yeah.
Are you with us? No.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Can you hear us?
I can, yes. Although I didn't hear the question.
We can hear you. Okay. As we talked about before, I would like to ask you you're a lawyer in New York, you're traveling a lot and you meet so many startups and legal issues. Do you think there is any way from your perspective, from a legal perspective, to push diversity and accessibility within the blockchain? Are there any best practice?
So with respect to best practices, and I'll try not to listen to the echo of my voice. I think one of the things that's important is to set an expectation that there will be diversity. And so if you're in situations where people are not putting forth a diverse team, you ask them to. For example, it could be something as simple as being on a panel where perhaps there are no women, right? Or no underrepresented minorities, or no people who have another sort of diversity, such as having some sort of disability. I think there are many instances like that. And certainly we see from a lot of clients who say, listen, if you're going to send a pitch to us showing how diverse your team is, we expect to see the same degree of diversity with respect to the people who actually are working on our matter. I do think one last thing I'll say is it's very interesting. One of the things that appears to have come out of some of the latest questioning with respect to Facebook and Libra is an idea that a lack of diversity, right? And how do we change that? How do we enhance it? And I think even just asking those questions of powerful organizations is very important. I think everyone is working towards diversity, but sometimes we just need to be reminded of it a little bit
more. Joshua mentioned Libra and diversity. You had a comment on that?
I do.
Yeah.
So I was with Congress the week that David Marcus had testified, and that was the U.S. Congress's biggest concern was diversity. Now, the focus of the Libra, well, at this point, what they believe the focus of the Libra coin would be towards those who are in third world countries, those who are the unbanked. Now, as we had started, Joshua and I and our other colleagues with Diversity and Blockchain had started to do some research as to who the unbanked are. Even in the United States, we found out that the unbanked was about 7% of our population. And unfortunately, though, the underbanked, which is that next segment, was about 27% in total. So almost a third of the American population would fit those who would be customers of the Facebook Libra coin. Now, when we start to look at countries like Africa, their guesstimate is about 1.6 billion people worldwide are needing financial institutions like what would be created from this new blockchain system and this new cryptocurrency. And the biggest issue that we had as we started to look at who those 1.6 billion people are is many of them have never had banks before. Many of them had issues like we saw with M-Pesa. In Kenya, where about 30% of those who got M-Pesa, which is another cryptocurrency system, ended up defaulting on those loans. And so this is the first time they've had bank systems without training and without an understanding and education in this area. They're likely to make a lot of very big mistakes, and mistakes that could cost them their livelihoods.
Yeah, yes, really important to have that in mind. And we'll come back to you also, Joshua. Meanwhile, I wanted to ask Montse or comment. You actually have a diversity initiative at Alastria, and I wanted to know what is that initiative and how do you hope that will evolve?
Yeah, I will say that more than initiative, we built Alastria already diverse. No, what we said, and we find out that the founders, we were coming from different backgrounds, and also we were having this 60-40% gender diversity, and we were calling, what we did is we called to our partners, and we created a group that is called Alastria Diversity. So Alastria Diversity is full of people who enroll themselves because they believe that the world is not diverse enough, that when we create organizations like Alastria, we create it in a way that we don't give voice to everyone who is different or diverse. So we said, no, it's not going to be the case in Alastria. We found it from the beginning, giving voice to everyone and thinking for all the points of views, because if not, how we can innovate? Innovation is about listen to really different point of view and trying to converge, trying to have a general view. No? What we say is that we can see prism, how you say prisma in English? Prisma. So you say a pyramid? So you say something that is an object 3D, but if you see it from one side, it will be a square. If you see it from another side, it's a triangle. And if you see it from the top, it's a point. So all the views are right because you are seeing something in 3D. And when you join the square in the bottom, the triangle in the side, and the point on the top, you see something more complex and more interesting. So joining different views help us to believe that this new way of doing technology, creating the new digital world, will be more rich and also will cover more needs. So this is the initial statement we made in our foundation. Alastria will be diverse. Alastria will have a group that is Alastria Diversity who will watch us and ensure that we are not being having some decision just taken because the same type of people. No, we will need to listen everyone, and that is complex, and that takes time, but we prefer to take this time at the beginning. So that is what we decided.
Very well, interesting. And could we get Joshua on again?
I'm still here.
Oh, you're here. Okay, great. Happy to have you. Okay, I wanted to ask you, as a legal expert, considering smart contracts, we did a short introduction to blockchain as a starter, and we explained how blockchain works. But how could you actually have a diversity approach? Is it possible to build into those smart contracts the diversity and accessibility? What would be your opinion?
So first of all, nothing is legal advice that I'm about to say.
Yeah.
I mean, one of the great things about smart contracts, as I'm sure was covered earlier, is that they use if-then logic to cause something to happen upon the occurrence of a triggering event, right? The triggering event is determined prior to having the smart contract go effective, right? You say we're going to look at this outside bit of information, this source of information that we trust to provide us the triggering event. In that sense, I think that you could say that the triggering event is something that we feel confident will provide diversity. Maybe that is that hypothetically 3 people need to weigh in, you know, and 2 of them must be in some way diverse, or these must be 3 people who are different. I'm giving 3 as an example. But I guess what I'm saying is the satisfaction of the conditions for the smart contract itself, you can require that those conditions include some measure of diversity.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Yeah, really thoughtful. We have to consider that and learn from that. Okay, I had for Shawnna, I wanted to know that from IBM, from your practice, from your work, how do you, when you design these new solutions from what you explained is something like a wall of possibilities, how can you, when you put together all these different technologies like AI, blockchain, and so on, how can you make sure that that comes out actually is accessible?
Absolutely. No, it has to be in the forefront of people's minds, and it has to be in the forefront of the developers' minds. One of the things that I do, and many of the other leaders at IBM are very thoughtful towards, is making sure that we have diverse teams. Now, those diverse teams are not just, as we think, diversity in general. We actually look at neurodiversity also. IBM has just hired our first team of autistic employees, and we are very excited to have their neurodiversity to join us as they think through things that we maybe haven't seen before or thought through before. And so as we start to take even that next level of diversifying our teams, that we believe helps build those products and those solutions that do include everyone and has the accessibility, because we are asking all different types of employees at IBM what the needs are and what their thoughts are and what are we missing.
Okay. Oof. Wow, great. Montse, that is going on in the US. Here in Europe, from your perspective, do you see any difference? I'm from the north, for example. I have different perspective, but do you see actually, is there any difference in the attitude towards diversity, accessibility from the projects going on, like north, south, east, west? Do you see any cultural difference?
For sure. I think there is. Yes, we are very diverse in Europe, I will say. I think all the different countries in Europe are thinking about diversity or thinking about accessibility differently. And also it's about how we have been evolving in the infrastructures, not just physical, but also digital, no? So it's very clear that when we build a city, depending of who has been doing this city, no? Who has been doing the architecture of the city, has been thought that there is different types of people in the world, that we have different needs. So that happens also in the digital world, and that happens from the north and south of Europe, and also from Britain, and also from the east of Europe. So it's different ways of understanding the beginning of foundation of how I'm going to design something. So you are coming from a country that is beautiful in terms of taking care of the nature, no? So you have beautiful forests, and it's very important to go out and to have some fresh air. And we in the south, we have been moving from the countryside to the cities. And we have forget that now the countryside, there is nobody there. And we are not putting in technological infrastructures in these little towns. So that is something that we need to revert, no? In the south of Europe, we need to come back to think, okay, the cities are okay, but now how we can get to the towns in an accessible way for everyone. Yeah. So how I can go in a road that is nice, in a way where I can arrive to the little town and to enjoy the nature, no? Because we also want to be in the nature, in the forest, enjoying the little piece of the town. Yeah. And there you don't have connectivity. So nowadays that we are in the whole world connected, we don't have Wi-Fi in the little towns. So what that means? That we cannot develop economically in these little towns. So we need to rethink a little bit the way how we are doing in the south of Europe, but also somehow in the north. Yeah. I think all together how we can build this new connectivity between everyone. And this is the opportunity, as Shawnna was saying, to rethink the world. No? Just now, what we have new technologies, let's use this as a first step to just come back and join a little bit on policies, no? On way of living, on how we can match this way of different cultures view and do the cross-cultural and little bit improving. No? Having said that, I must say that Europe, the good news is that it's right now being regulated in a common way. So when we say Europe is saying that the policy of accessibility is this one, all the European countries, we must follow that. So that's a way to have these cross borders, letting us to be more a little bit designing the things in the same, not the same way, but the same possibilities, giving the same possibilities to everyone.
Yeah. Maybe so that's also another takeaway from this
another
session.
takeaway.
Yeah, and also, I think there's some, what happens is when in all Europe and in all the world, people are moving into the cities, and actually people that stay on the countryside are many times old people. They don't move into the towns, and maybe people that are not academically prepared in the same way that people that move into the cities. So we actually have to think so much about them also. So a blockchain for the countryside and connected countryside and all. Yes. Yeah, that's a good one.
Blockchain for developing the countryside and enjoying living in the countryside and working there.
So that's great. Another takeaway. I want also to invite you to ask questions. There is a microphone here, I believe. So just raise your hand or shout out a little, and I will invite you to ask any questions. Okay? You can ask in Spanish or English. It's okay. Shawnna also speaks Spanish because she lives in Florida. Oh, okay? So you should. You do. You understand. She understands. Okay, Joshua, I guess you're listening and hearing us?
I am.
Great. I have another question for you. I was thinking of, you work from a legal point of view when people are raising funds and ICOs, which is actually kind of the blockchain space name for startups and so on. Do you see that there are any startups, any blockchain initiatives that actually develop products or services, or are actually really considering diversity and accessibility in those dApps and those business proposals? Is there any such trend, or can you see that?
So I'm sure that there are. I'm trying to rack my brain to think of any that come immediately to mind. But what does come to mind is that in certain legal hackathons that I've been involved in, for example, I was a judge at the finals for the Global Legal Hackathon. There was a special, in addition to the main competition, there was a separate competition that was for diverse teams. And I thought that that was really important to have teams that are, that are put forward that really emphasize having, for example, a woman who is a founder or a leader, or a really diverse team in any respect. I think that that is really important to support that so those groups can get recognition. And I can think of lots of women-led and underrepresented group-led projects and companies in the space. I think this is a fantastic space, as was said before, because there are fewer barriers to entry at this point. I would like, however, to see more projects of the type you are suggesting, where diversity and promoting diversity or serving the needs of a broader group are really worth. I do, of course, see projects that do talk about serving the underbanked, the unbanked, providing alternative methods for providing loans, things like that. But in terms of actually providing additional access, I would like to see more. Another thing I have seen, though, is focuses on providing broadband service to neighborhoods that are underserved and that don't have that kind of access. I think we have to remember that before people can really access many of the types of technologies that we're talking about, they need to have internet access.
Yeah, it's about touching the same issue as you had before. Okay, we got like 7-8 minutes left. If there is any question, please raise your hands. Oh, we got a question. Great.
There's another one there.
Yeah, he was pointing.
Yes, hello, good morning. My question is in fact, for Stefan. Maybe the others can complement and reach. I really enjoyed your very clear presentation of what is blockchain, the different blocks, the different elements, and the processes that take place there. And my question is of a technical nature. Beyond the obvious accessibility elements that we could encounter in the user interfaces, what are, in your view, the biggest or the key accessibility challenges that we find there from a technological point of view? Can you give us some examples on the developments of this blockchain where from a technical point of view, accessibility must be considered and ensured? Thank you.
Oh, I will do an easy. I will answer you in an easy way. I will ask our experts surrounding me what's the best solution all the issues are. So, but I was really glad to catch up. You want to?
Yeah,
comment on it?
Absolutely, no.
Yeah.
First?
Whoever, okay.
Go ahead.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry.
I'll go second.
No. Well, I wish we will do together, but I think we need to take into account that right now the development of blockchain is what we call back-end, no? So it's not giving the entrance, the accessibility from the human being directly to the blockchain. We have a software that is off-chain, and this software off-chain needs to be really well connected to the chain, no? So that's the challenge. The challenge is that most of the developers that are trying to do that are not front-end developers, are back-end developers. So what that means is that in their minds is not necessarily having the idea that they need to connect the accessibility where you are going to access from off-chain to on-chain needs to have several patterns, several rules, because software is already we have already some rules, some policies to make a software accessible. So that has been already happening in the web, in the world web wide. So we already know from web and from mobile how to make it accessible. But we don't have these back-end developers learning about that because they are back-end developers. They are developers of something that is new, and they are usually not used on understanding these other things. So the challenge is this, is to help all these developers in blockchain to move them a little bit more on the off-chain way, no? And for me, that's the reality right now on the software development.
Absolutely. Well, and I'd like to dive in a little deeper on the partnerships you just discussed. And what we are seeing are consortia or ecosystems of various players. And so, for example, in the automotive industry, we have Ford, we have Fiat Chrysler, we have VW, and other automotive manufacturers coming together and building what's called the Responsible Sourcing Blockchain Network. Now, that network can trace minerals all the way back to the mines. But there are a lot of players between the automotive manufacturer who's putting that cobalt into their vehicle for autonomous vehicles, all the way back to the mine that it comes from. And there are a lot of human rights issues, of course, at the mines. We see with Congo that there are many, many issues with child labor. And so the ecosystem that blockchain provides to us needs to also make sure that we need to make sure that that ecosystem is diverse and does include everyone. And so that's one of the issues that I see. It's more of an organizational problem versus the technology itself. And so being mindful that your ecosystems, or we call them consortia, those consortia include all different types of people, all different types of companies, and that all are included.
I hope I
And
gave,
can I jump
gave
in
you a
too?
good answer. Is there another question?
Joshua, I think you wanted to say.
Oh, Joshua, I'm sorry. Okay.
This is the thing, with what's been said, of course, education is very important too, because I don't know about you, but often when I begin talking about blockchain with someone, they say, oh, this is beyond me. I don't know what you're talking about. Or they may say, I'm glad you understand blockchain, this is way beyond me. And I think finding ways to bring people in to make them feel as though they can contribute to the conversation, and that this is accessible and that everyone is figuring it out, I think is important.
Good point.
Thank you. Yeah, good point. I hope I gave you a good answer with these fantastic speakers. Is there another question?
There's a
Not at the
question over
moment.
there, no?
No, I think it's pointed to the. Okay, so we are going to closing this round table, and I would ask the three speakers if they, in 1 minute or so, could say how would they ideally imagine the blockchain scene or the blockchain development from here to, let's say, 5 years, to give it some space. If you want to start, Montse?
Yeah, I will start. I will say we will not notice that there is blockchain behind us, but we will be more digital. So we will have less frictions, interaction frictions with technology. So anyone will be using technology in a very fresh way and conscious way. Because right now we are using the software and the net in a very, let's say, not so conscious way, no? What we are trying to do, we are not sure that we are doing it properly. So I think blockchain is going to deliver this control and this responsibility to each one of us, to each individual, and that will be a different world. So we will see what happens. I'm very interested to see what will happen when we will be conscious of what we are doing in the digital world worldwide, massively. No, also in the countryside, but in everywhere. So I think we will have, for sure, more freedom of decision in that terms, I hope. And I think that this is why we need to work with regulators to guarantee that this control and this conscience of what we are doing in the digital world is really what we want to do. So more maturity in the way of how we are telecommunicating between us.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Blockchain is going to change everything. Our financial system is fully changing, and the way that we trace everything is going to change with blockchain. And I think my ask of you today would be to be mindful and purposeful and get involved in blockchain projects, because the developers don't know what they don't know, and you in this room are educated, and you know a lot of things that can help make this system the best system it can be worldwide.
Thank you. And Joshua, what would be your conclusion or hope?
Wow, so these answers so far have been great. I think the other layer that I would add to what was said is that from a regulatory perspective, I hope that 5 years from now, we have many well-worn paths that help developers, technologists, other market participants, and their lawyers to feel confident in pursuing projects, and that we will be able to have global and that can comply with regulations around the world. Echoing what Monty and Shawnna have said, and applying it, for example, to regulators and legislators, I think that it is every bit as important that we continue to have discussions openly with regulators and legislators to help them better understand the technology and its process, and to, frankly, the developers understand what the regulators are saying as well, almost like translators.
Thank you so much, Joshua. And I think this has been actually a fantastic roundtable. I learned so much. I want to thank the organization for the possibility to organize this roundtable, to Fundación 11. I want to thank you for your attention. And of course, I want to thank the speakers, both the present one and Joshua, for your effort to be online. I think it's 5 o'clock in the morning now in New York. So have a nice day. Thank you so much. A big applause for you and for the audience.
Thank you, everybody.